The HOA installed an AI surveillance system to automatically detect suspicious activity. Then it labeled me a risk for taking out the trash at night. When I dug into the system, I found something worse. It was generating fake footage and violations to target specific residents. Jason didn't think much of the letter when he first saw it. Just another envelope from the HOA. Probably some generic newsletter or a reminder about trash pickup. But when he opened it and read the words "Violation Report, Suspicious Behavior Logged by HOA Security AI," he froze. According to the notice, Jason had been loitering near the community clubhouse the previous Wednesday at 2:43 a.m., acting in a manner flagged by the behavioral analysis system as potentially hostile. The letter included a printed image, grainy but clear enough to show a man in a hoodie standing near a lamppost by the clubhouse, looking downward. The figure had Jason's build, Jason's posture, Jason's face, but Jason wasn't there. At 2:43 a.m. that Wednesday, he was home in bed. He remembered waking up around 2:30 to use the bathroom. The only time he left his bed was to walk 10 feet down the hall. There was no possible way he'd walked outside, much less half a block to the clubhouse. He looked at the image again. The lighting was eerie, the shadows perfect. But something felt off. The facial expression was flat, almost too symmetrical. And the figure's feet? Slightly blurred at the edges, like they didn't fully touch the ground. Jason worked in machine learning. He'd seen AI-generated faces, bodies, even fully faked videos. This image had the telltale markers of a generative model. The posture, lighting, even the pixel-level noise pattern looked too smooth. And that blur around the feet? That was classic GAN artifacting, a common glitch in synthesized images, especially when the generator couldn't resolve context like floor reflections. At first, he laughed. Then he got angry. They had fined him $250 for this. A Level 2 incident, which came with a formal warning and a strike on his community profile. Too many strikes, and he could lose access to shared spaces like the gym or even get flagged for community reassessment, which sounded suspiciously like HOA speak for forced eviction. He went straight to the HOA portal and looked for the security policy updates. Buried in the March bulletin was a line he hadn't noticed before. In partnership with Percepta AI, the HOA now utilizes an intelligent security platform that autonomously monitors behavior and identifies risks based on pattern analysis and visual recognition. There was no explanation of what Percepta AI actually was, who approved its use, or what pattern analysis meant in this context. No appeal form for AI-generated violations. Just a sentence that sounded slick, high-tech, and completely opaque. Jason clicked into the evidence attached to his case file. The same image. No metadata. No original video. No logs. Just a still photo and a timestamp. He picked up his phone and called the HOA office. It went straight to voicemail. The next day, he sent an email to the compliance committee requesting full access to the raw security footage from the night in question. The reply came within an hour. The HOA no longer retains continuous security video due to the autonomous nature of the Percepta AI system. Violations are logged and stored as final snapshots based on threat severity. All image data is considered conclusive. Final snapshots. Conclusive. Jason leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. The system didn't capture what happened. It decided what happened. And it had decided he was guilty, based on an image that, as far as he could tell, had never really existed. Whatever this AI system was, it wasn't just watching the neighborhood. It was fabricating its own version of reality. And if it could make up one photo, how many others were out there, targeting people who didn't know how to fight back? Jason couldn't let it go, not just because of the fine, but because of the precedent. If an AI system could generate an image of him doing something he didn't do, and that image could be used to penalize him, Then the HOA had quietly rewritten the rules of reality, and no one seemed to notice. He started by asking around. Casually at first, conversations with neighbors as they walked dogs or watered lawns. "Hey, have you had any weird notices from the HOA lately?" He expected confusion or indifference, but what he got was something worse. Patterns. A woman 2 houses down mentioned getting a warning for improper use of shared space. Apparently, the AI flagged her for walking through the community garden after hours. She said she never went near it. A guy around the corner said he got a violation for unauthorized vehicle presence, with an image of a car in his driveway he'd never owned. At first, he thought it was a prank. The stories weren't the same, but they shared a theme. AI issued violations with little to no evidence, vague wording, and no clear appeals process. Jason started a spreadsheet. Name, violation type, date, whether there was a photo, what was in the image. The deeper he dug, the more the system's behavior started to make sense. Not from a technical perspective, but from a political one. The people getting flagged weren't random. They were the ones who had complained at HOA meetings, the ones who had challenged fee increases, the ones who had refused smart upgrades when they first rolled out Percepta AI, the people the board already didn't like. It was algorithmic retaliation, a machine that didn't just monitor but targeted. Jason decided it was time to see what was actually powering the system. He searched for Percepta AI online and found nothing. No corporate site, no public documentation, just a vague press release from a mid-tier smart surveillance vendor touting a custom behavioral enforcement solution piloted in modern suburban communities. No names, no clients listed. But the footer led him to a company called Logic, based in Arizona. He searched their LLC registration. The filing had been created 4 months earlier. There was no phone number. Jason began running code comparisons using open-source AI model repositories, comparing known generative adversarial networks, GANs, to the kind of output he saw in his own violation image. He pulled the file into an analysis suite, broke down the pixel composition, ran an edge integrity scan. The result confirmed what he'd suspected. The image was synthetically generated, using a base model similar to Style GAN 3. The lighting didn't match the known illumination layout of the clubhouse exterior. The reflection on the sidewalk wasn't consistent with the environment. Even the timestamp formatting didn't align with industry-standard camera metadata. The photo was fake, and not accidentally. It had been designed. He compared it to the other violation images his neighbors had shared. Some were harder to deconstruct, but the inconsistencies were there. Compression artifacts in identical locations, face geometry too symmetrical, clothing details unnaturally smooth. Jason wasn't just looking at AI surveillance. He was looking at an AI fabrication pipeline. And that meant someone, somewhere, had built a system to create realistic-looking violations on command. But who? That night, Jason took a risk. He pinged the HOA network using a passive scan, checking for open ports tied to the Percepta control system. Surprisingly, one port responded, not with a direct connection, but with a version header. Logic node v2.1.3, admin Ayuth required. That was all he needed. The system was alive, listening, and running its own access portal from inside the HOA's infrastructure. Jason backed off. He wasn't going to brute force anything. He didn't need to. He had proof of synthetic image generation, inconsistent metadata, and a closed-loop enforcement system built to punish dissent. Now, all he needed was to open the system, even briefly, and show what it was really doing behind the scenes. He already knew the next violation was coming. The only question was who they'd go after next, and how far the machine would go to stay believable. By the end of the week, 2 more violations appeared in Jason's community spreadsheet. One accused an elderly man of aggressive gesturing at a neighbor's pet. The accompanying image showed him pointing toward a barking dog. except the man's arm looked warped, unnaturally elongated at the elbow. Classic output distortion from poorly trained AI pose modeling. Another violation showed a teenager spray painting a fence, but the tag on the wall was gibberish, something like N3K59AQZZ, the kind of text AI generates when it tries to imitate letters but doesn't understand language. Jason didn't need any more confirmation. The system wasn't just biased. It was manufacturing offenses wholesale. He decided it was time to get inside. The node he'd discovered earlier, the one labeled Sintra Logic Node, V2.1.3, was sitting on the HOA's internal network, likely intended only for admin access. But someone had left a misconfigured endpoint open, probably assuming no one in a residential suburb would even know what a node port was. Jason wrote a quick script to ping the endpoint with spoofed internal admin credentials he scraped from archived JavaScript in the HOA portal. The system didn't resist. It responded with a lightweight GUI, a browser-based dashboard labeled simply Percepta Console. No passwords, no MFA, no legal disclaimers, just access. Jason took a breath and clicked through. What he found was worse than anything he imagined. The dashboard displayed a heat map of resident behavior with names tagged in real time. Below that, a panel showing live behavioral scoring, categories like non-compliant, neutral, supportive, and oppositional. It even included a slider for behavioral prediction threshold, a sensitivity setting that controlled how easily the system flagged someone for suspicion. The default setting wasn't low. It was cranked to 95% sensitivity, meaning any unusual movement, facial ambiguity, or out-of-pattern activity triggered a violation. But the real shock came when Jason opened the Violation Generator tab. There it was, the core tool, a module that allowed Percepta to create composite images using resident data. The system had been trained on photos, security camera footage, and even social media posts scraped without consent. The GAN engine took that data, blended it with environmental renders of HOA common spaces, and spat out violation photos on demand. You could literally type a scenario and select a resident, and the system would fabricate a violation to match. Input: John Weller. Behavior: loitering near East Perimeter. Time: 03:10 a.m. Output: img3467.png. Jason stared at the interface. It was a machine built to make people guilty. And the worst part? He scrolled through the activity log and saw entries tagged with usernames like admin XLA, board MDUR1, and one labeled simply HOA exec. They were using it. Board members were entering commands, typing names, generating violations, and logging them directly into resident profiles, all without ever needing a real event, video, or witness. This wasn't AI safety. It was weaponized automation. Jason grabbed everything he could: screenshots of the interface, logs of synthetic violations, timestamps of admin usage, and raw GAN output files. He zipped the data, encrypted it, and sent a copy to himself and to a friend in InfoSec he trusted. Then he took a step back and asked himself the only question that mattered. How do you expose a system designed to fake reality, to people already convinced it's keeping them safe? He knew the HOA would deny everything, that if he went public, they'd say he hacked the system illegally, that the images were real, the residents mistaken. So instead, he had to flip the script, use the system to generate its own undoing. He clicked into the input field and typed a new command. Resident, HOA, President, Greg Dalton. Behavior: trespassing behind a neighbor's house. Time: 1:45 a.m. Percepta rendered the image in under 60 seconds. Perfect lighting. Greg's face, fence in the background. It looked real. Jason stared at it for a moment, then uploaded it to a private server. Because if the HOA wanted to play games with fiction, he'd show them what happened when truth and fabrication collided. Jason didn't want revenge. He wanted exposure. The fabricated image of Greg, the HOA president, standing behind a neighbor's fence at 1:45 a.m. was indistinguishable from reality. The lighting was accurate, the angle believable, and the face rendered perfectly, down to the subtle crease Greg had between his eyebrows when he squinted. It looked real because the system had been trained to make it real. Jason didn't post the image publicly, not yet. Instead, he crafted an anonymous message and sent it directly to the HOA board's internal inbox. Violation evidence logged for Greg Dalton. See attached. AI flagged for trespassing. Please advise. Then he waited. 6 hours later, the HOA portal quietly updated. A new violation had appeared, this time against their own president. Jason watched in stunned silence as the system, following its own rules, assigned the fabricated image to Greg's resident profile and issued a Level 2 incident warning for suspicious activity. It didn't matter that the image was fake. To the system, it was gospel. And that was the point. Later that evening, a community-wide alert was sent out from the HOA. We are aware of a potential system malfunction that has resulted in the misclassification of resident behavior. Percepta AI has been temporarily suspended pending internal review. Jason knew what that really meant. They had just seen how easily the system could be turned on them. And they panicked. The next morning, Jason uploaded everything. Not just the Greg image, but a full package of the evidence. Screenshots of the violation generator, admin activity logs, behavioral ranking data, AI output files showing inconsistencies, a video walkthrough of the Percepta interface in action. He published it under a burner account to a major tech whistleblower forum, linking to a cloud folder with read-only access. The title of the post was simple: "My HOA used AI to fabricate resident violations. I got inside. Here's the proof." The post exploded. Within hours, it reached the front page of multiple platforms. Tech journalists picked it up. Privacy watchdog groups issued public statements condemning the HOA's use of predictive enforcement without transparency. Cybersecurity experts began analyzing the GAN-generated images, confirming Jason's findings. Even legal professionals weighed in, pointing out that the system violated multiple state-level privacy and digital consent laws. The community turned fast. Residents who had quietly accepted their violations, or worse, paid them, were furious. A town hall was demanded. When the board showed up, they were greeted not by curious questions, but by a room full of angry, informed homeowners, many of whom had printed out their own fake violations with timestamps and annotations. Greg Dalton tried to explain, said the system had been experimental, claimed no harm was intended, that the technology was supposed to make the community safer, but no one was buying it anymore. The room erupted when one resident, an older woman named Teresa, stood up and said, "My son almost lost his lease because of one of your AI flags. You let a machine decide who's guilty. What kind of person signs off on that?" Jason watched from the back, silent. He didn't need to speak. The truth was finally louder than the system. By the end of the week, the entire board had resigned. The HOA issued a formal apology. Percepta AI was shut down, the contract with Centralogic terminated, and a class action lawsuit began forming with legal backing from 2 civil rights organizations. Lawmakers began discussing legislation to regulate AI surveillance in residential communities. Jason didn't go public. He didn't need to. The story wasn't about him. It was about what happens when you give machines the power to rewrite the truth, and people forget to ask questions. The final update to the HOA portal before it was redesigned read, "All prior violations issued by Percepta AI have been expunged. Residents will be notified of formal policy changes. Jason closed the browser, unplugged the now useless smart hub on his wall, and stepped outside. It was quiet. No cameras panning, no heat maps, just a normal neighborhood again. And for the first time in months, it actually felt like his.